problem with non-self. Many people, when they begin to encounter the deeper concepts of Buddhism and of the Buddha's teaching and of where the path actually is leading to, many people start to examine the concept of the third aspect of tilakkhana. Tilakkhana means ti or three ti, three. Lakkhana means properties. I think that's properties on a right click on a computer. Yes. The three. I call them three conditions. I prefer to call them three conditions. In official Buddhism, I'm not sure what they call. Namely, anicca, tukkhang, anatta, anicca, anicca. Anicca is impermanence. All things are subject to impermanence. Try and find a thing which is not impermanent. This should be the mission of analytical meditation or contemplative meditation, not analytical. Meditation is never analytical. Analysis comes after. It should be contemplative. So one contemplates in stillness of mind, the tilakkhana. All Dhammas, while studying the Dhamma and practicing the Dhamma, which means contemplating the truth of the matter into its deepest depths within you and in the world around you and in your own experience. If you can find the Dhammas or the truths, the way things are, which the Buddha described, and check them out. And this is why he said bhajatang vetitapo vinyohiti, something like, I don't translate through, I translate doyat. Doyat in Thai means not a literal translation, but the true meaning. Sometimes another language won't use the same word or verb for that context, and I find direct translation a matter for academics. I am not an academic in that sense, rather I am autodidact. I am self-taught and self-intuited. I find my own answers, which is what the Buddha taught. Do not believe because it's in a book. Don't believe because your guru said it. Don't believe because your teacher said it, your mom said it, or everybody else believes it, or society says it's not true. You believe when you find in your experience that it is valid and that it is true in its context and it is useful, then you should take it and absorb it into your life and apply it to your life, that it may enrich in your life. These are the only Dhammas which should be believed. The Buddha warned about this again and again, because superstition and gullibility, which means people believe easily, is rife. It was rife back then, and it's still rife now. So, non-self is the main topic of this Dhamma talk. I hope I deserve to call it that. One should always women. No, that's for another day. I promise I will do. Can I teach Dhamma? This is another question people ask me. I've been going for a while and I would like to spread it, but I don't know everything yet. Another day we'll talk about that. Right now, I'm going to go back to the main topic, which is non-self and the problem with non-self, if there is any at all. And why people have a problem, why people discuss, and people have been discussing this for 2,500 years, and bhikkhus have been, in an auspicious way, in dittos, arguing about this. We're having Dhamma wars, we have Dhamma discussions. It's part of what a bhikkhu should do, sit and have discourse in order to discover and uncover one's wrong views and to find higher views and advance along the path to open one's eye to see new Dhammas which reveal the truth and open the worlds. Bird lok, open the worlds, lift the veils. Vicha bird lok, the vicha to lift the veils and remove the dust from our eyes and to see the true nature of all things as they truly are, universal nature of things as all creation is in truth, not as we purport it to be, or as our senses or our mind as it is conditioned through those senses is to be. This is part of having 5 candas. This is part of tilakkhana, of being anicca, impermanent, clinging to impermanence, bringing dukkha, suffering, and anatta, non-self, which is the problem we deal with in this talk. So, in order to understand non-self properly, so one does not have to sit and argue, I'd like to go through a few things. Before that, I'd just like to say where it leads later, because when we begin the Buddhist path, sometimes I laugh now these days, because when I entered the Buddhist path, if I had known then where it was going to lead, but had not known why it is a joy, and had just known the transformation that lay before and lies before me, I don't think I would have wanted it, because one still possesses very much of a false view, or one has ignorance of ignorance. You see, the ego would take offense at this word. Excuse me, this is a bad word to use for Dhamma. In this case, one should never refer to people, even in general, as those who can do this and can't do that, or those who are ignorant and those who are this or those, because it splits people apart, causes schisms, and it causes emotions to arise, dissent. So I gave the wrong word, I apologize. Yes, maybe I'll get into this another day. Anatta, non-self. We have to study the 5 candas. Where it will lead to later is the paticca-samuppada, which is dependent origination, and which is the cycle of rebirth, a never-ending rebirth in samsara, vatacak, a never-ending wheel of illusory existence, which is subject to impermanence, anicca, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness of impermanence, therefore suffering, because we cling to those impermanent things. And lastly, the third one, anatta, non-self. All things are not self. All things, no thing has a self. There is no thing which has a fixed, unchanging, eternal, undying thing which is a self. But it does have a thing which is not anything you could call a self, and that is what is never added in any teaching or argument I have heard. Perpetual motion is something English speakers know. Perpetual motion is the attempt to make a machine, or these metal balls on the executive desk that hit each other and keep going for a long time. Or these mobiles that will go for a long time, a glass bird that drinks water from a bowl and keeps dipping its head in. Perpetual motion machines, but of course because of the friction of the atmosphere, even a rocket in space, you switch off the rocket at 5 million kilometers an hour, you will keep going at 5 million kilometers an hour. It will take you lifetimes to slow down, because there's a vacuum, there's no friction, unless you hit a rock or a meteor, of course. But so nothing is completely permanent. So the mind cannot be said to see this. Say, if the mind was a self, it says the self is my mind. I have myself. I believe the self is my mind. Okay, let's assume it's true. So my mind. What am I thinking now? What are you thinking? Well, okay. Just before I asked you what were you thinking, something else, no? And by this time you'll be already experiencing a new bubble of thought passing, arising, and as it arises, the one you were thinking has disappeared. It's gone. It's completely gone. It's empty, it was never there. As if it was never there. You have memory. You have sanya. Sanya is memory. When you perceive something, even if you're actually, what you're seeing and hearing now is memory. One, because I already made this recording, so in a physical sense, in an outer space, outside, the illusion of outside you sense. But also in another sense, in a more abstract sense, if you can figure that out. So, to continue, this more abstract part is, of course, the mind. Every thought, it's impermanent, and so consciousness, when we think about things, it is because we are conscious of something, and when we become conscious of it, we then proliferate because of our candas, for example, our senses, memory. You smell something that reminds you when you were a child, and it reminds you of something good or bad, and your memory arises, and this is consciousness. Consciousness arises. This is in a later talk about Padicca Samuppada, the dependent origination, and the academic splitting of it into 12 links, 12 notions, which are for me empty but are necessary notions to use. They're limited notions which help us to understand something that is very unlimited. Unfortunately, they seem to design it as a cycle or a circle. It has a circular kind of effect, but it is not, and it does not have a beginning point of the 12 stages they make, nor an end. But there is something happening between them that causes our misfortune to be born and reborn in samsara, and have to suffer the Four Noble Truths, which are that you're born, you get old, you get sick, suffer, die, lose everything, have to fear of loss, have to suffer many loss of relatives, loss of many things, health, and dukkha, unsatisfactory. It's impermanent, it's unsatisfactory, it is not self, we do not own it, it is beyond our control. My health is beyond my control, my health is not myself. My car, it will not always be shiny and red, it will get a flat tire, somebody might scratch it, a vandal, or it might, my life, my health, my beauty, my youth, my happiness, my good mood, the way I feel right now, and whatever. This party won't last forever, as they say. And so, this tilakina, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, which leads to dukkha, to suffering, because of that impermanence, and there is no thing that is perpetuates as a self, because the self, or what one would call a self, if Buddhists would be flexible enough to allow both the words self and non-self to exist. This is what one of my favorite ajahns, Ajahn Cha, Sapato, also looks at of Luang Pu Man, of another monk I just made a biography of Luang Po Simpali, which you can find on my SoundCloud podcast at soundcloud.com/Thailand Amulets. Anyway, that's the marketing. So nothing perpetuates. You could say that, oh, Ajahn Spencer, he is a smiling fellow. Well, you never see me get out of the wrong side of the bed in the morning, you know. Nobody is like this or like that all of the time. We do have qualities, but those qualities, they change and they fluctuate. And that's part of dukkha, part of the suffering of transience, of impermanence. It's also one of the sufferings of humans, as in the 6 In Tibetan Buddhism, they explain 6 realms of samsara. Well, of 6 realms of different kinds of beings who are caught in the realm of becoming, in the Vattajaka, in the Vattajak, the wheel, cycle of rebirth, the wheel of time, impermanence, endless, no respite. One of the sufferings of the humans is in these 6 worlds, animals suffer from something, the asura, jealous gods suffer from something, even though they have power and riches and they live for eons. Even the gods, for that which the Buddha points toward, which I like to call the far shore when I feel poetic, but that which Buddhism calls Nibbana, Nibbana, Pratnibbana in Thai, Pratnibbana, Paranibbana, into the gone beyond, gone beyond even conceiving of that which can be gone beyond. I quote Baba Ram Das. Google it. So our experience is perpetual, like the perpetual motion machine we spoke about in the first part of this talk, about the problem with non-self. And I always used to argue when we had these arguments. I was ordained when we would sit and really chew bones on it as bhikkhus in the evening. It's when we never slept much. You only sleep 1 or 2 hours a day, really. There's no respite as a bhikkhu either. This was part of the lesson. You have 5 candas, you are born. One of the sufferings of the humans is incessant action. And I like to say in Spanish, la ausencia de la autocarencia, the absence of the feeling of completion. That if you got your house and you want a garden, if you got a garden and you want a swimming pool, you got a swimming pool, you want a new car, you got a new car, you want a better car, and you put the instinct, which is also evolutionary instinct to survive and to expand, which causes us to evolve, it's evolution. That's how we discovered sciences, and there's another, go very deeply into that another day. It's natural. That is why what the Buddha did is unnatural. Magic is natural. It is a science. It is a vitaya in Sanskrit, in Makata. Makot, Pasa Makot, Makata Sanskrit, which was the language of the Buddha before they made Pasa Bali or Pali Sanskrit later in Sri Lanka, which was sometime after the Buddha, I don't know, when they made that after the Buddha's leaving, so that they could write down, I don't know. Anyway, academia. What is important is the heart of Dhamma and insight into touching and feeling the heart of Dhamma and knowing how to find it in yourself, because nobody else is going to be able to reveal it to you except yourself within your own mind. Nothing else. Everything you experience, all that happens to us, all of our experience arises in our own minds. When we see a sinner and think he is sinful, the sin exists in our mind, not in that of the sinner. The sinner is oblivious to that which we conceive of as sin. And we experience a kusala dhammada through inauspicious phenomena, inauspicious thing, inauspicious dhamma. All things are dhammas. If you can listen to another talk I made about what is the Dhamma, you can find on YouTube on my channel. What does the word Dhamma mean? Yeah, the word Dhamma it was called. So it's an inauspicious Dhamma in the mind of the righteous assuming person who watches another practitioner In the temple when I stayed, there's a lay practitioner hanging around. If you're in a motorbike club, you'd be a hang-around, not a member. So you are white, you're not a bhikkhu. Have this kind of hierarchy. If you're paranoid or your ego has that kind of mind process, then you will feel like that. If it doesn't, then you'll be a lot better off. But it happens to a lot of people on a lesser or greater extent, staying in temples, especially the first few times. So one goes to practice and one finds oneself critical watching others, and when one watches others and is criticizing in one's heart or mind, one is not practicing the 5 precepts, they're only doing it with body and the white clothes. But if the mind is still killing and the heart is still killing, then, then the precepts are not held. So some people say to me, I go to the temple for 3 days to practice, wear white, and I come out, I feel really good. I always say, either then you really have been practicing well for a long time, or you did not practice and you did not look at what you were supposed to be looking at. Because if you had wore white and, felt good and then, just picked up on the good vibes of the temple and the nice chanting and the flowers and the Buddha statues everywhere, which the Buddha actually forbade to make imagery of him, because then it would make us cling to Rupa Dhamma. He did not allow Rup. He doesn't let you, if you are one of his bhikkhus and you are practicing, then he does not allow in his practice to let oneself fall into fascination or into seeking temporary pleasure, because temporary pleasures are part of what leads us into endless suffering, clinging to those. They do not provide an ultimate release, they just leave one wanting more again later. If you smoke cigarettes, you know. If you've ever been addicted to drugs, you know. If you've ever been addicted to sex, you know. If you've ever been addicted to Buddhism as an academic, you know that one can lose oneself in the role one thinks one plays. And Rupa Dhamma is not something that the Buddha recommended. There again, he also used Rupa Dhammas as primary focus objects when he taught the first 10 of his 40 Vipassana Kammatthana techniques of insight and mindfulness meditation. The first 10 teachings were the Kasina, the Tassa Kasina, which were basically focusing primarily on outer objects, which were mainly yantra, or symbols you made, which were relevant to the 4, 5 or 6 elements, depending on your practice, and staring at them. This is very recommendable, in fact, for those who find it hard to close their eyes and abstractly just use a kata chant. Without their eyes, their minds wander. So to still the mind and learn how the feeling is of a still mind, first using an outer object to stare at is very good. It's excellent. In Thailand, they've removed these from the practices. Most temples do not teach it, even when you're ordained. Only magicians may stick them, a lot lay practitioners might. And so monks who do it will do it because they learnt it when they were a Gusi, or they learnt it when they were a lay practitioner. They weren't Brahman Ajahn. So magic is worldly. So Vitya or Vicha in Thai means like science or craft, art. The arts and crafts is a science, and there is a certain scientific and also spiritual aspect to it, which allows it to manifest if one is lucky enough to discover behind all of the fakery and the fantasy that it really exists and how it can be controlled. The Rishi, they, through their yogic practices, they discovered these, and through doing the Kasin-sip, the 10 Kasinas, also it causes the Itipadas, the 4 powers, to arise. And leads towards the Apinya powers afterwards, with purity of practice, which are the 6 powers leading to arahantship. You can't get to arahantship without passing through all of these. Any anyway. So seeking power in itself is not the path to enlightenment, but unfortunately along the path to enlightenment it's going to happen anyway. So there's a danger you might fall into some thinking you're Superman when you find you have psychic powers, and you can read minds, or you see the future, or you can tell people what's going to happen, and some people make a profession out of it. Watch out for these. This is against the God Cruel, against the law of the Guru. Like as Ajahn forbade his books to be sold. He said the Dhamma is not something, I think it was Lungta Mahabua, the Dhamma is not something to be sold in a marketplace. It's to be given free, for the Buddha has decreed that Dhamma, to give the gift of Dhamma is the supreme gift of all gifts that you can give somebody, because the Dhamma can liberate them from samsara, and it is the ultimate medicine and the ultimate bliss that knows no end, not a temporary excitement or satisfaction which we seek. Like I just spoke about, if you smoke cigarettes, you know addiction. It's one of the links in the chain of the Paticca Samuppada, the dependent origination, the chain of rebirth into the Vatacaka, the endless wheel of samsara, illusory, wrong view. We're here because of wrong view. So, non-self. If you understand non-self, one has to look for a permanent, unchanging, non-transient part within one's five candas, which I shall list shortly, and I think I'll give a different, separate, complete talk on it. They call them skandhas as well. Sanskrit here. I call them candas because I translate my Buddhist spelling of words and the way I spell and will speak Pali. It will be very Thai influenced. So if you're interested in Thai Buddhism or ordaining and wishing to know the terminology and how to pronounce things here, how to chant, etc., you're best off listening to me. But if you want to do it really as it really was and is in Sri Lanka and as it was in India, then you're probably better listening to Sri Lankan monks chanting, because I pronounce it as we do here in Thailand. So anyway, non-self, we need to look at the five candas. What are the five candas? Roop, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhan, Vinyan, Rupa, form, your body, materiality, shape. Vedana is feelings, emotions, maybe reaction, first proliferation. I'll come back to this when I hit the last one, which is Vinyan, Vedana. Third one is Sanya, perception. That word is normally not used, I use it. Memory, Sanya is memory. Sanya, the word Sanya in Thai, which is related to Sanskrit and to Pali, well, to Pali, modern Sanskrit, means, you can use in a modern sense to say, Sanya means, no, I won't get into that. Sanya is memory. Now, you can say, well, how can memory be perception too? It can be perception because by the time I have thought and spoke something, even though it's very fast, it takes a minuscule split moment of a second to reach your ear and for you to process it. Which means that just as when you look at a star explode that is 500 light years away, is a star which has not existed since 500 years, and the explosion you are viewing already happened 500 years ago, you are viewing the past in the present in such a case. In the same sense, as we are speaking now, or as I am talking and you are listening in this case, then, well, it's already happened. By the time you get to know about it, it's already happened. If the time is short, maybe you can still affect some, react and influence something. I suppose that's travelling in time, and you can reach back in time just a little bit, enough to keep hold of it and realize the situation or solve the situation. How about that? Time is not certain either. How big is a moment? And what separates a moment from the other moment? And what separates one thought from the next when one fades away and gives way to the next? Whatever it is, its only quality which I could name it for using Nama Dhamma names, is, what do you think? Well, that name is Anatta, non-self. It has no particular self. It has nothing that be called, nothing in particular about it that can be called self, for it perpetuates itself without any such need. It is empty, it is pure, unstained, it is birthless and deathless. It is that which I have come to know as the Overself. That is my personal word, my personal way. Everybody has to have their personal ways. It's just a word. People make religions out of a word or a way of thinking of things, and actually, that's where wrong view comes in. One of my masters, one of my earliest masters, and still who I respect so much, is Lama Rinpo Tulku Rinpoche, who's one of the 4 Tulkus who protect the Karmapa, and who will return to find him in his reincarnations. I was lucky enough to know Rinpo Tulku and to receive teachings from him on various occasions in retreats before I came to Thailand, and people assumed me to be a Theravada Buddhist. I'm not even a Buddhist, because Buddhism is completely imaginary, but it's necessary up to a point, and the only way I have found on this planet, which I could point to and recommend and say this way, this is how I found how to see things, and how I will find my Nibbana, how I will find liberation from suffering. So this is the only gift I really have to leave the world with when I die, so I suppose that's why I'm doing it. So non-self is not something that is not, it is something that is. Nibbana, Nirvana, is not something that is not, it is something that is. But it is not something in particular. That would be limited then, wouldn't it? If it was a frog, or if it was a mood like this. If we had the same mood all the time, for humans, that's like a robot or something. It's not about stopping the constant flow of the ocean, the ebb and the tide. It's about going with the flow of the ocean and the ebb and the tide. And I think, who knows, who's not an arahant? Can you teach about the mind of an arahant? Well, actually there are teachings about the minds of the 4 or 8 kinds of enlightened persons, about how the mind would be, but also in your own practice and meditation, one can temporarily enter states which, although one comes back from and doesn't see or think it so clearly anymore, one can remember the mood and how it was. So that's like a preview. So sometimes with jhana and other experiences of Vipassana, which correlated maybe in Vedananupasana, when in the 4 Satipatthanas you look at first your body, it's about 50 practices or something, then you look at your feelings, then you look at your citta, your mind, then you look at the Dhamma, look at all the Dhamma, all phenomena. But first we start with the 5 candas, And I recommend to understand the problem, if you still hear this talk and you don't understand, at least theoretically, if not with insight, you will have to contemplate to receive the insight. Nobody receives insight and becomes enlightened to any Dhamma without contemplating it with sati, sampajanya and panya. Sati means collectedness. Sampajanya means effort to maintain one's collectedness and focus. And panya, well, that arises when you do that. It is wisdom. It means you've got sense in your head. You haven't lost the plot. You haven't lost it. You are seeing things clearly. Your mind is still, and you are able to contemplate the Dhamma for as it is. For you have not let your mind be conditioned by mood or fluctuation of view. You're just sitting still and stopping naming things and letting things be, and it's part of letting go of clinging. Meditation teaches us to do this, because to meditate one has to let go. So letting go is another one for another talk, another day. Study the 5 candas and study the 3 conditions I call tilakkhana of the impermanence, anicca, dukkha and anatta. And think. You can maybe listen to a talk I made, which I can recommend you a talk which was about the space, what lies between things. Perhaps I shall make a new talk on that. I would like to talk more about that. I asked what lies between a thought and the next thought, what lies between one feeling and the next. I didn't finish that before I go. What lies between me and you? What lies between the speaker and the hearer? He who meant it and he who understood what was meant. Was the same thing understood? For sure, I think we can conclude, yes. How does that happen? What transmits? What is transmitted between all those things which are empty in themselves? Is a word a vehicle with a meaning sat inside it, driving between my mouth and your ear? No. No. It's a total haze of frequencies, of particles. If you study quantum physics and subatomic particle theory, then microscopic level, then you would see that there is no such thing as rupa, as a real form. All forms are just clouds made of forms, smaller, tiny forms, which are also so, and it's infinite. So actually there's no such thing as matter. But it doesn't matter. We're still here, or we seem to be. And that's the important thing. So, non-self, don't let it bother you. You're here, you're still here. And if you're enlightened, you'll still be here. Or if you're not here, it's because you died already. And if you're enlightened, you won't be coming back again. So don't worry about that either. And that's it on non-self. 5 candas and tilakkhana, those 3 conditions. Study them, contemplate them when you meditate. Do anapanasati, breathing, exercise and focus. Once your mind is still, contemplate these dhammas, your 5 candas, and are they subject to the 3 laws of tilakkhana? Are they impermanent? Can they lead to eventual suffering? And do they have a self, or are they yourself? Do it with your body. Cut off your toe and say, was that me? I'm still here, so what's my toe now to me? That's asubha bhavana. You can do it with your feelings. You can do it with your thoughts. You can do it with your perception. What you're perceiving now is not what you're perceiving a minute ago. What you smell now is not what you were smelling a minute ago. Watch it moving. It's like a cork in a storm on the ocean. You're like a boat on the ocean, a captain without a rudder, moving from one emotion to the next, one instinct to the next. Go get a Mars bar from the fridge. Change your mind when you open it because you saw some peanuts and something reminded you of something, and the next thing it's influenced you to take those peanuts. Think about that. Contemplate those things. And I wish you all really well, and hope that the Dhamma finds all of you well, and that it watches over you